see you, bro. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The city clock. What? Let it load, let it load. 1, 2, 3, 4. The city clock is ticking, but the silent street is cold, where power hides behind the glass and converts life to gold. The top domain of generals, the corporate executive, and politicians locked in step decide how we must live. The dense triangle at the peak that manages our fate and turns our private troubles into reasons for the state. They tell us that our sorrow is a weakness of our own, that every soul must struggle in its isolation lone. They hide the hidden scaffold that connects our quiet pain to the engines of the war machine, the debt, the systemic chain. To see the threads that bind the personal to the historic sky. That is the spark of clarity that clears the blinded eye. So come with what you carry, be it little, be it grand. The carpenter's calloused thumb, the painter's steady hand. The story of the factory floor, the mother's quiet grace. The poet with a broken heart, who seeks a honest place. We do not need their capital, their halls of polished stone, when every gift and skill we have, when shared, becomes our own. Step up unto the public stand, take up the open mic, and name the invisible structure that makes all our struggles like. Unite the small resources, lay the bitter fear aside. For when the personal meets the collective, there is nowhere left to hide. The power elite may hold the wealth, the media, and the tower, but the imagination of the folk is still the sovereign power. We were trained to fear our voices, taught to keep the secret tight, taught to hide the heavy story in the quiet of the night. For the cult of single bodies, where the ego reigns supreme, tricks the lonely into thinking that the self is all the dream, while the glowing screens commodify the flesh upon the bone, and the dark industry profits when the worker bleeds alone. They sold us objectification wrapped in silk and digital thread, made us fear the simple beauty of the sacred words unsaid. Yet the matrix starts to fracture when a single voice awakes, when the fear of being seen or heard is broken for our sakes. Imagine now the towns and cities, every street and public square, where the microphones are standing in the open, honest air. No corporate filter, no algorithm, no price tag on the stand. Just an open mic, waiting for a trembling, honest hand. It takes one soul to step up to the iron and the wire, to expose the dark elite who trade in debt and synthetic fire, to speak of pure devotion, of the Spirit's quiet light, to share the gift of truth that brings the morning to the night. For when one voice dares to shatter the silence of the street, The artificial isolation suffers its defeat. The magical initiation is not hidden in a cave. It is found when we unite to give the voice we never gave. The glowing screen is now the altar where the children bow. 1,000 blue-lit faces trap and feed an algorithm now. The doom scroll hums its quiet hymn. The soul is sliced and sold. For Wall Street trades the breath of life for digitalized gold. Work, work, work. Until the eye is dim, the spirit spent and sore. To buy the dream, the advertisement hangs before the door. In Hollywood, the mirrors crack, the shiny idols fade, while deep in darkened rooms, the fix of fentanyl is made. The sex is digitized in strips, the heart is turned to glass, as OnlyFans and proxy love watch lonely decades pass. The military engines roar, the skies of Iran bleed, as dark councils and secret halls calculate human need. The masters of the war machine, the bankers in their towers, who feed upon our mutual fear through all these heavy hours. They built a matrix out of code, a simulation cage, where free will seems a phantom phrase written on a forgotten page. The mind-forged manacles are real, though spun from wire and light, and many seek the final exit in the sudden night. Yet hear the whisper through the noise, beneath the city's roar. There is an older brotherhood that waits beyond the door. A sisterhood of quiet flame of liberty and grace, who keeps the lamps of wisdom lit inside the silent place. Not in the left hand dark of self, nor in the corporate greed, but where the rosy cross is planted in the living seed. Rise up, turn off the glowing glass, step out upon the sod. The dirt beneath your barefoot stride is still the holy God. In meditation, break the circuit and the frantic chase. Invoke the light that lived before this simulated space. For soul meets soul in true accord when communities awaken, and those who love the earth shall find they were never forsaken. Through birth and death and rebirth still, the ancient spark remains. No machine can bind the spirit, no algorithm forge its chains. The powers of ordinary men and women are circumscribed by the everyday worlds in which we live. Yet even in these rounds of job, family, and neighborhood, They often seem driven by forces they can neither understand nor govern. Great changes are beyond their control, but affect their conduct and outlook nonetheless. The very framework of modern society confines them to projects, not their own, but from every side. Such changes now press upon the men and women of the mass society, who accordingly feel that they are without purpose in an epoch in which they are without power. But not all men are in this sense of ordinary, as the means of information and of power are centralized. Some men and women come to occupy positions in American society from which they can look down upon, so to speak, and by their decisions mightily affect the everyday worlds of ordinary men and women. They are not made by their jobs. They set up and break down jobs for thousands of others. They are not confined by simple family responsibilities. They can escape. They may live in many hotels and houses, but they are bound to no one community. They need not merely meet the demands of the day and hour. In some part, they create those demands and cause others to meet them. Whether or not they profess their power, their technical and political experience of it far transcends that of the underlying population. What Jacob Burckhardt said of great men, most Americans might well say of their elite. They are all that we are not. The power elite is composed of men whose positions enable them to transcend the ordinary environments of ordinary men and women. They are in positions to make decisions having major consequences. Whether they do or do not make such decisions is less important than the fact that they do occupy such pivotal positions. Their failure to act, their failure to make decisions, is itself an act that is often of greater consequence than the decisions they make. For they are in command of the major hierarchies and organizations of modern society. They rule the big corporations, they run the machinery of the state, and claim its prerogatives. They direct the military establishment, they occupy the strategic command posts of the social structure, in which are now centered the effective means of the power and the wealth and the celebrity which they enjoy. The power elite are not solitary rulers. Advisors and consultants, spokesmen and opinion makers are often the captains of their higher thought and decision. Immediately below the elite are the professional politicians of the middle levels of power. In the Congress, and in the pressure groups, as well as among the new and old upper classes of town and city and region. Mingling with them in curious ways which we shall explore are those professional celebrities who live by being continually displayed, but are never, so long as they remain celebrities, displayed enough. If such celebrities are not at the head of any dominating hierarchy, they do often have the power to distract the attention of the public or afford sensations to the masses, or more directly, to gain the ear of those who do occupy positions of direct power, more or less unattached, as critics of morality and technicians of power, as spokesmen of God and creators of mass sensibility. Such celebrities and consultants are part of the immediate scene in which the drama of the elite is enacted. but that drama itself is centered in the command posts of the major institutional hierarchies. The truth about the nature and the power of the elite is not some secret which men of affairs know, but will not tell. Such men hold quite various theories about their own roles in the sequence of event and decision. Often they are uncertain about their roles, and even more often they allow their fears and their hopes to affect their assessment of their own power. No matter how great their actual power, they tend to be less acutely aware of it than of the resistances of others to its use. Moreover, most American men of affairs have learned well the rhetoric of public relations. In some cases, even to the point of using it when they are alone, and thus coming to believe it. The personal awareness of the actors is only one of the several sources one must examine in order to understand the higher circles. Yet many who believe that there is no elite, or at any rate none of any consequence, rest their argument upon what men of affairs believe about themselves, or at least assert in public. There is, however, another view. Those who feel, even if vaguely, that a compact and powerful elite of great importance does now prevail in America, often base that feeling upon the historical trend of our time. They have felt, for example, the domination of the military event, and from this they infer that generals and admirals, as well as other men of decision, influenced by them, must be enormously powerful. They hear that the Congress has again abdicated to a handful of men, decisions clearly related to the issue of war or peace. They know that the bomb was dropped over Japan in the name of the United States of America, although they were at no time consulted about the matter. They feel that they live in a time of big decisions. They know that they are not making any. Accordingly, as they considered the present as history, they infer that at its center, making decisions, or failing to make them, there must be an elite of power. On the one hand, those who share this feeling about big historical events assume that there is an elite and that its power is great. On the other hand, those who listen carefully to the reports of men apparently involved in the great decisions often do not believe that there is an elite whose powers are of decisive consequence. Both views must be taken into account, but neither is adequate. The way to understand the power of the American elite lies neither solely in recognizing the historic scale of events, nor in accepting the personal awareness reported by men of apparent decision. Behind such men and behind the events of history, linking the two, are the major institutions of modern society. These hierarchies of state and corporation and army constitute the means of power. As such, they are now of a consequence not before equaled in human history. And at their summits, there are now those command posts of modern society which offer us the sociological key to an understanding of the role of the higher circles in America. Within American society, major national power now resides in the economic, the political, and the military domains. Other institutions seem off to the side of modern history, and on occasion, dually subordinated to these. No family is as directly powerful in national affairs as any major corporation. No church is as directly powerful in the external biographies of young men in America today as the military establishment. No college is as powerful in the shaping of momentous events as the National Security Council. Religious, educational, and family institutions are not autonomous centers of national power. On the contrary, these decentralized areas are increasingly shaped by the Big Three, in which developments of decisive and immediate consequence now occur. Families and churches and schools adapt to modern life. Governments and armies and corporations shape it. And as they do so, they turn these lesser institutions into means for their ends. Religious institutions provide chaplains to the armed forces, where they are used as a means of increasing the effectiveness of its morale to kill. Schools select and train men for their jobs in corporations and their specialized tasks in the armed forces. The extended family has, of course, long been broken up by the Industrial Revolution, and now the son and the father are removed from the family by compulsion, if need be, whenever the army of the state sends out the call. And the symbols of all these lesser institutions are used to legitimize the power and the decisions of the Big Three. The life fate of the modern individual depends not only upon the family into which he was born or which he enters by marriage, but increasingly upon the corporation in which he spends the most alert hours of his best years, not only upon the school where he is educated as a child, an adolescent, but also upon the state which touches him throughout his life, not only upon the church in which on occasion he hears the word of God, but also upon the army in which he is disciplined. If the centralized state could not rely upon the inculcation of nationalist loyalties in public and private schools, its leaders would promptly seek to modify the decentralized educational system. If the bankruptcy rate among the top 500 corporations were as high as the general divorce rate among the 37 million married couples, there would be economic catastrophe on an international scale. If members of armies gave to them no more of their lives than do believers to the churches to which they belong, there would be a military crisis. Within each of the Big Three, the typical institutional unit has become enlarged, has become administrative, and in the power of its decisions has become centralized. Behind these developments, there is a fabulous technology, for as institutions they have incorporated this technology and guided, even as it shapes and paces their developments. The economy, once a great scatter of small productive units in an autonomous balance, has become dominated by 200 or 300 giant corporations, administratively and politically interrelated, which together hold the keys to economic decisions. The political order, once a decentralized set of several dozen states with a weak spinal cord, has become a centralized. Sometimes the masses of Satan. The political order, once a decentralized set of several dozen states with a weak spinal cord, has become a centralized executive establishment, which has taken up into itself many powers previously scattered, and now enters into each and every cranny of the social structure. The military order, once a slim establishment in a context of distrust fed by state militia, has become the largest and most expensive feature of government, and although well-versed in smiling public relations, now has all the grim and clumsy efficiency of a sprawling bureaucratic domain. In each of these institutional areas, the means of power at the disposal of decision makers have increased enormously. Their central executive powers have been enhanced. Within each of them, modern administrative routines have been elaborated and tightened up. As each of these domains becomes enlarged and centralized, the consequences of its activities become greater, and its traffic with the others increases. The decisions of a handful of corporations bear upon military and political, as well as upon economic developments around the world. The decisions of the military establishment rest upon and grievously affect political life, as well as the very level of economic activity. The decisions made within the political domain determine economic activities and military programs. There is no longer, on the one hand, an economy, and on the other hand, a political order containing a military establishment, unimportant to politics and to money-making. There is a political economy, linked in 1,000 ways with military institutions and decisions. On each side of the world, split running through Central Europe and around the Asiatic rimlands, there is an ever-increasing interlocking of economic, military, and political structures. If there is a government intervention in the corporate economy, so is there corporate intervention in the governmental process. In the structural sense, this triangle of power is the source of interlocking directorate that is most important for the historical structure of the present. The fact of the interlocking is clearly revealed at each of the points of crisis of modern capitalist society: slump, war, and boom. In each, men of decision are led to an awareness of the interdependence of the major institutional orders. In the 19th century, when the scale of all institutions was smaller, their liberal integration was achieved in the automatic economy by an autonomous play of market forces, in the automatic political domain by the bargain and the vote. It was assumed that out of the imbalance and friction that followed the limited decisions then possible, a new equilibrium would in due course emerge. That can no longer be assured, and it is not assumed by the men at the top of each of the three dominant hierarchies. For given the scope of their consequences, decisions and indecisions in any one of these ramify into the others, and hence top decisions tend either to become coordinated or lead to a commanding indecision. It has not always been like this. When numerous small entrepreneurs made up the economy, many of them could fail, and the consequences still remain local. Political and military authorities did not intervene. But now, given political expectations and military commitments, can they afford to allow key units of the private corporate economy to break down in slump? Increasingly, they do intervene in economic affairs. As they do so, the controlling decisions in each order are inspected by agents of the other two, and economic and military and political structures are interlocked. At the pinnacle of each of the three enlarged and centralized domains, there have arisen those higher circles which make up the economic, the political, and the military elites. At the top of the economy, among the corporate rich, there are the chief executives. At the top of the political order, the members of the political directorate. At the top of the military establishment, the elite of soldier statesmen, clustered in and around the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the upper echelon. As each of these domains has coincided with the others, as decisions tend to become total in their consequence, the leading men in each of the three domains of power, the warlords, the corporation chieftains, the political directorate, tend to come together to form the power elite of America. The higher circles in and around these command posts are often thought of in terms of what their members possess. They have a greater share than other people of the things and experiences that are most highly valued. From this point of view, the elite are simply those who have the most of what there is to have, which is generally held to include money, power, and prestige, as well as all the ways of life to which lead these. But the elite are not simply those who have the most, for they could not have the most were it not for their positions in the great institutions. For such institutions are the necessary basis of power, of wealth, and of prestige. And at the same time, the chief means of exercising power, of acquiring and retaining wealth, and of cashing in the higher claims for prestige. By the powerful, we mean, of course, those who are able to realize their will, even if others resist it. No one, accordingly, can be truly powerful unless he has access to the command of major institutions. For it is over these institutional means of power that the truly powerful are, in the first instance, powerful. Higher politicians and key officials of government command such institutional power. So do admirals and generals, and so do the major owners and executives of the larger corporations. Not all power, it is true, is anchored in and exercised by means of such institutions, but only within and through them can power be more or less continuous and important. Wealth also is acquired and held in and through institutions. The pyramid of wealth cannot be understood merely in terms of the very rich. For the great inheriting families, as we shall see, are now supplemented by the corporate institutions of modern society. Every one of the very rich families has been and is closely connected, always legally and frequently managerially, as well as with one of the multi-billion-dollar corporations. The modern corporation is the prime source of wealth, but in latter-day capitalism, the political apparatus also opens and closes many avenues to wealth. The amount as well as the source of income, the power over consumers' goods, as well as over productive capital, are determined by position within the political economy. If our interest in the very rich goes beyond their lavish or their miserly consumption, we must examine their relations to modern forms of corporate property as well as to the state. For such relations now determine the chances of men and women to secure big property and to receive high income. Great prestige increasingly follows the major institutional units of the social structure. It is obvious that prestige depends often, quite decisively, upon access to the publicity machines that are now a central and normal feature of all the big institutions of modern America. Moreover, one feature of these hierarchies of corporation, state, and military establishment is that their top positions are increasingly interchangeable. One result of this is the accumulative nature of prestige. Claims for prestige may be initially based on military roles, then expressed and augmented by an educational institution run by corporate executives and cashed in finally in the political order. Where General Eisenhower and those he represents, power and prestige finally meet at the very peak. Or you could say, for Donald Trump, like wealth and power, prestige tends to be cumulative. The more of it you have, the more you can get. These values also tend to be translatable into one another. The wealthy find it easier than the poor to gain power. Those with status find it easier than those without it to control opportunities for wealth. If we took the 100 most powerful men in America, the 100 wealthiest, and the 100 most celebrated away from the institutional positions they now occupy, away from their resources of men and women and money, away from the media of mass communication that are now focused upon them, then they would be powerless and poor and uncelebrated. For power is not of a man. Wealth does not center in the person of the wealthy. Celebrity is not inherent in any personality. To be celebrated, to be wealthy, to have power requires access to major institutions. For the institutional positions men occupy determine in large part their chances to have and to hold these valued experiences. Period. Power, money, wealth, inequality, exploitation, these things will change as we can become the change we wish to see. But we also need to educate ourselves as to how the system, how could it come to be so corrupt, so divided, so anti-human. And so the answer is held in the spirit of each individual, where we must break with the norms we were told and realize each person can become the Christ, the Buddha, the genius, the politician that redistributes energy and wealth and ideas so that it is not idolized and centralized into an authority that abuses its power, its wealth, and its means of expressing authority. Poder, dinero, riqueza, desigualdad, explotación, Estas cosas cambiarán, ya que podemos convertirnos en el cambio que deseamos ver. Pero también necesitamos educarnos en cuanto a cómo el sistema, cómo podría llegar a ser tan corrupto, tan dividido, tan antihumano. Y entonces la respuesta se guarda en el espíritu de cada individuo. O debemos romper con las normas. Nos dijeron y nos damos cuenta de que cada persona puede convertirse en el Cristo, el Buda, el genio, el político que redistribuye la energía, la riqueza y las ideas para que no se idolatre ni se centralice en una autoridad que abusa de su poder.
Authority.
Es riqueza y lo es de expresar autoridad.
If you want to speak, brother, you're welcome.
The mic is open. The floor is open. All are welcome. For we need people of all backgrounds, of all colors, of all shapes, of all classes, of all fields, of all experiences. We need one another more than ever. El micrófono está abierto. Un piso está abierto. Todos son bienvenidos porque necesitamos personas de todos los orígenes, de todos los colores, de todas las formas, de todas las clases, de todos los campos, de todas las experiencias.